Excited to have you all here. Happy New Year. So we'll call this meeting to order and we'll open it up for public comment. And when you're ready,
I'm Pam Chadbourne. I have a law for two from here. First off, I'm going to just reiterate, I think that I'd like to hear a roll call at the beginning of the meeting. I'd also like the meeting documents to be posted online in addition to the agenda. That used to be the way all boards and commissions were run. It should still be for public engagement and public service first off. And I really am not interested in any other reasons why not. It's in the best public service to say the names of the people who are here, to give you credit, but also so the public knows. And because you can't always read these on the video. And oh, by the way, name things. And and the meeting documents are generated for you folks. So why not post them for the public? I wanted to ask you to reconsider two of your agenda action items. First, the promotion to council of changing odd year elections to even year. Please don't do that. There's huge reasons for why it's good and why it was established and why we do it. It is not in the best interest of the people in the city of Littleton. And you haven't shown any reason other than, oh, younger people vote less in off-year elections. There's no other rationale that I've heard for asking that. It's an inadequate and even bad reason for changing public action. All voters have lower turnout. The real problem for elected positions right now is there's not a turnout for primary elections. And petition originated changes are driven by special interests with a lot of money. That's the problem for elections. The solution has to be something else than changing our elections to even number years. Even number years have too many items on them already. Don't add more. Also, the project downtown recommendations. I'm sorry, I think that this board is using its special access to advocate for personal things. I don't see any evidence or reason for advocating for certain things for downtown, project downtown. I'm going to point out that I've been going to more next gen than I think anybody in this room. And I saw the first 4 years. And the white papers that were generated are no longer posted or accessible to you, but you should go see what the work was that they did. They looked at pros and cons of different scenarios for outcomes, for costs, for schedule, and for risks and mitigations. And that's what you should be considering. Not just what somebody wants for project downtown, which to me, I have not seen any other basis, no analysis, no evidence, no consideration of different scenarios in this meeting or presented to you. That is the only valid justification for action that affects the public assets, which are not fixable for 80 years. Thanks very much.
So we have a rollover agenda from holiday season. Opportunity to spend time with family and loved ones and holiday. But also in that time, our new is on. And so Amanda, I would love to hear from you. Just introduce yourself to the board, and then team will go ahead and share back who we are, and then we'll share how long or so that we're as good.
It's good to meet you all. My name is Amanda Henderson, and hopefully you got to meet me a little bit in some way or another during the election season. I had a lot of fun connecting with people and being able to hear people's stories and share. So a little bit of my background is that I've lived in Littleton for 13 years, and I've got 3 kids who are the little one's birthday's today, 22 and 19. And they're actually all living with me right now. So I understand the pain of the next generation. And they're in transition, you know, details if you want. All's good. But my work background is that for 20 years or so, I've been doing work in interfaith relationship building and political advocacy, mostly at the state capitol here in Colorado. I was executive director of an organization called the Interfaith Alliance of Colorado for 7 years, where we did a lot of work on human rights and equality issues and brought people together from different religious backgrounds to advocate for our shared values for inclusion. So then about 5 years ago, I started working at the Iowa School of Theology, where I lead an Institute for Religion, Politics, and Culture, and do a podcast and several audio projects working to shift the narrative and culture, and teach some classes about inclusion in local politics, and do a lot of work helping people engage in their communities in ways that are working for more people to be included and have access. So I ran for city council because I love Littleton, and my kids are independent, and my work, I finished a PhD in 2024, and I'm kind of one of those people that needs 10 things on my plate. And so it's like, all right, PhD's done now. Where else can I practice the things that I care about? And heard that the seat was coming open in District 3, and talked to several people and decided to do this. And I've been thoroughly enjoying it. And I don't come with a particular agenda or drum that I'm beating as a city council person. I come with a passion for people and community and process, and making sure that people's voices are heard, especially people whose voices are so often pushed aside, and wanting to make sure that our community in Littleton continues to be a place where people from all different backgrounds and ages and stages can live together and thrive. So I'm grateful to be part of this board, and to be able to support you all and work together to make sure that the voices of the next generation are present as we think about how we set policy and imagine the future in Littleton.
Welcome, I'm very excited to have you. I guess maybe we should do some doctor.
Yeah. I don't need to do.
Well, folks, do we just want to go around and keep locking eyes with you? Do you want to kick it off? Go around.
I'm Mackenzie Fleck, born and raised in Littleton. So yeah, I've been here my whole life. My term is coming to an end this year. But joined because growing up in Littleton, it's a wonderful place to live. I ended up moving back to Littleton with my husband after traveling around, and I want to see Littleton flourish. I think it's had a lot of starts and stops, and I'd like to see us push through some different items that could really make it a spectacular place for so many different types of families, young kid people, whoever it is, to live while maintaining the character and community that I grew up with.
I'm Khaki Fleck. I was also born and raised in Littleton. Went to LPS schools. And I joined the boards pretty similar reasons, but I think growing up here, the things I loved most about Littleton was the open space, access to trails, and having like a vibrant downtown, and being able to go to Aspen Grove and shop around with friends, and having just a lot of different access to a lot of different things. And I think we've seen Littleton, like when the tavern and McKinner's came in, it was super exciting and it was thriving, and then kind of dipped a little, and now it's coming back. And yeah, I just want to do what I can to support those things.
I'm Michael Cizik. Lived in Littleton only for maybe 2 years, like a month, but have lived in Colorado before. I've been around the country a little bit, but yeah, my wife and I, when we were most recently living in Florida, we were considering all sorts of corners of this country to move to, hopefully someplace with mountains. And I had been familiar, having lived in Colorado before, of just the Denver metro area. We made multiple trips to Colorado, trying to identify if we were to come here, like what would be sort of the right place for us. And Littleton just kept consistently coming up for us. And it was the focus that we could even tell as outsiders of community. We loved the trail system. And we just love the pragmatic side of living in a small place, like good schools, good businesses, paired with like good history. Like you go to some suburbs and it's just like, yeah, we built houses here because we like to live indoors. But here it's like, no, like there's like real history. And so we cherish that. And so I wanted to get involved in the city, and this was the way that I'm doing that. So, yeah.
I'm Bobby Thomas. This is my first year on the board. I really wanted to get involved just because I think like local governance and politics is where most things actually happen, at least at the level that we can have some influence over. And yeah, I just really like Littleton as a whole. Similarly, I don't really have a specific, wouldn't even say I have a super specific long-term vision for the city or anything like that I'm after. I just like good process and good governance and have a lot of passion for that. Yeah.
I'm Ricky, and yes, the Ricky Bobby jokes do exist.
Good. I told him when the email came through, I was like, is it too soon to make a Ricky Bobby joke?
Never too soon. But I am from the state of Colorado. I grew up down in Colorado Springs area, and so all right, whereabouts?
Liberty High School.
Okay, nice. Okay.
In the 90s. So.
In the 90s, okay. Monument, so just north up the hill.
Yeah.
Yep. So, but so, small town, my wife and I moved up to Denver, and then we kept looking, where do we want to kind of establish roots, and Littleton kept popping up. And, initially when I expressed interest in this board, it was really just to represent myself as the next generation and, be a voice for that generation. And since then, when I joined the board, I had one little kiddo. I now have two little kiddos. And so my perspective has really changed about this is a lot less about this generation, but the generations that we're bringing into the world. So that's a big passion of mine, is to think about, we can look at the things that are important today, but are we also acknowledging the things that are important for tomorrow too, when, we're no longer here and they're kind of inheriting what we're trying to help develop. So that's a big focus for me. And I will also add that my term ends this year.
Well, welcome. Good to meet you. My name is Jeremiah Guy Williams. This is my first term, and I kind of run into the stereotype. I'm a Texas transplant, so I was born and raised in South Texas, went to school in Austin, and then moved from Austin here. I just say came to Littleton by chance. It was different cities where I was thinking about post-grad. Did not want to go to Arizona, it was too hot. And I was like, I like Denver. It just so happened my first job was in Littleton. But even since then, I've transitioned to different roles, and I work downtown in Denver, and I still live in Littleton. So it's a commute I happily make 3 times a week, but part of that is just because I just love Littleton. I call it my home, and I see the potential for it to be not just where it is today, but just to continue to grow and just to flourish. So similar thing, not having necessarily very specific agenda, but just more of again, be that representative voice for people who have that ability to, and just to continue to help progress.
Last but not least, I suppose. I'm Chris Nelson. Been liaisoning this board for just under 2 years now, I think. Nice. Don't live in Littleton. I live down in Lone Tree, actually. I'm a Colorado native, though. I grew up in Castle Rock. And I guess my Littleton connection, besides working here, is that I got my associates at ACC quite a while ago now. Goodness gracious. But yeah, I do work for the city. I do accounting. I'm in the accounting department. So all those fun monthly reports that you see out on the website, that's me. Been helping this board. I think my favorite part of being a part of this board is just supporting them in their efforts to make fun, solid, productive recommendations to city council. And it's been cool to see how that's been a lot better over the last year or so. So getting to see this, the board grow together and really start to make those recommendations practically, have more open dialogue and discussions has been fun for me. And just supporting them here in meetings and outside of meetings is something that I really do enjoy. doing, just helping the board operate from systems, structures, how do we actually develop good recommendations, and how do we continue to deliver on the mission that this board was created to achieve. So I'm really enjoying my time so far. I'm here as long as I'm employed at the city, so.
We'd be lost without you, Chris.
I'll introduce myself if you don't mind.
Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Alright, my name is Mike Gent. I work with Chris, just a few feet over actually in the city manager's office. I live in Littleton, just behind Euclid Middle School, and I love it, but I happen to live in District 3, so Councilmember Henderson is my representative. I love the different choices I have in titles to refer. I can refer to you as the Reverend Manderson or the Reverend Doctor Manderson. Now I could the Reverend Doctor Council. Or as Ricky said, Amanda. I love this community, and I'm so excited about its current state, its history, but even more so about its future. I love the trajectory that we're on. Yeah, we have some real challenges, but man, we have some incredible opportunities too. And I look around at this next generation, and I'm pretty darn excited about what you all bring to the table, literally and figuratively. Thank you.
Well, we're super excited to have you here. And hopefully this helps you get to know us a little bit more. We're going to be doing a lot of talking, so a lot more time to get to know us, but just kind of set the stage of where we're at as a board right now. So yeah. Well, with that, folks, let's go ahead and jump into our discussion topics tonight. So the first one is to discuss the specific ideas on project downtown planning and design. It's been a little bit since we met, so I know there's been that break, but I wanted to kind of just regroup because that was a heavy conversation that we had back in November about, we initially looked at this and saying it would be great if we could do all of it, right? And then we had to kind of ground truth to say, where are the recommendations that we want to advise city council and what matters and how does that represent what our mission is as a board. So I want to open that up to see if there's been any further conversation, well, maybe not conversation, but thought, any sort of ideas that you all have had, because I think we did feel a lot of passion around that as a topic to pursue forward. And so I just want to open up the floor to see if there's any follow-up with that.
I think what I got out of that was there are a lot of personal interest when it comes to downtown Littleton, which I think is a kicking off point for what does matter to next gen, but not necessarily like the end goal or the point is to address personal interest, but it is to look at holistically what we think isn't going to be important moving forward and making sure that the systems are in place. I think we want to look at it more as a big picture approach. Then I think there's concerns about how Project Downtown is going to be connected to Geneva and so many other things, and where money could be wasted by not having those systems connected. And so for me, that's kind of how I've been thinking around it, is like, what are these processes? Why aren't certain committees being why aren't these all being thought about in connection to each other? These items, at least based on some of the presentations we've heard, it doesn't feel like it's as holistic of an approach as it could be. And what items are money being spent on or not being spent on that we think actually has value and longevity value. That makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It sounds like, if I'm capturing it correctly, it seems like you're like there's still a lot of kind of like those gaps that haven't been addressed yet.
Yeah, I think we have like a really pretty picture presented to us, and like this is exciting, but I don't know if everything's being answered or everything's being thought of in a more holistic sense. Like I was really disappointed when we asked someone who's working on Project Downtown what their thoughts on Geneva Village were. And they said they hadn't been thinking about it, when I think those two really to each other. Because what you do in one can really affect the other. Parking, traffic. I mean, more restaurants, do you need them if you're putting them here or there? Like all of that, what kind of businesses are coming in? so.
And if I remember, because it's kind of jogging my memory, there was going to be another conversation about project planning for this year, right? Am I capturing that? I wonder if maybe that's something that we should invite a follow-up on after that meeting. Kind of see like, because it felt like when we had that conversation, it was like kind of have to put a plug in it until that conversation took place with, I think it was the city, maybe? And we're gonna try and follow up on that. So I wonder if that might be something that we just explore again. To your point, like, what are those connection pieces that happen? So we can be a little more educated on like giving that thought behind it.
I'm sorry, we're talking about Project Downtown? Is that what you're- So specifically the Main Street project, the part that's moving forward.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah, we last talked about it in November, I think, and
yeah.
we were
And
kind of trying to drum up ideas.
yeah, I think, but like also, I think we had questions about Project Downtown because there's no answers on Geneva Village yet. And the fact that there's no answers on one when they like,
Sure.
they're the same
Sure.
area.
So we're moving forward with a phase or a portion of Project Downtown, just Main Street right now. The rest of it will absolutely need to incorporate that larger vision. There's a couple other things that need to potentially be considered as well. So the part that's moving forward right now, its design is just Main Street. There are several other big planning ones that are moving forward this year that we'll be asking for this board to appoint a representative to be part of the stakeholder group that'll be more involved. So one of those is the Littleton Boulevard sub-area plan. Another one is the transportation master plan. And another one is the climate risk and vulnerability assessment. All things I think that you'll probably easily be able to find someone who says, yeah, I want to be more involved with that. And having a single representative does not preclude the whole board from discussing and jumping in on that. Just allows more efficiency of time use, that's all. And certainly there'll be opportunities where we want to bring the whole project to the board. But like the transportation master plan is probably an 18 to 24 month window. Same thing with the Littleton Boulevard sub-area plan, same thing. So there'll be, if you're done with your term in April or in March and you don't choose to apply again, well, you'll have to be involved as a citizen then. But if you are if your term goes into the next, you'll definitely have lots of opportunities to be involved. And those would be really good ones that our council would want to hear advice from this board.
It's gonna be a good next year.
It's gonna be busy already, yeah.
And Mackenzie, I mean, I'm just getting up to speed. But one of the things that I've seen already is I hear what you're saying of like, is one being planned in a silo and missing something that's happening in the other, and that then things can fall through the cracks if these aren't being thought about together because they are connected ultimately. My observation so far is that there is a lot of work happening to make sure that they're connected. And one is there's one key project manager who is holding all of these projects and building a database and a system where we can look at each of the projects, in one big system, spreadsheet, and be able to see where they're at and when they're in different stages. And so there's a team that is also, there's different people heading those up, but they're in constant communication and working together as those are rolling out. So while, even just the city processes, I was at the Geneva Village, ULI, was it ULI, event last spring, and that was so fun. And it was like, holy cow, this is like, we're obviously like doing a lot of throwing out ideas that those things are going to be happening around the different projects that might seem disparate, but as it comes to actualization, there is a group that is closely looking to make sure that they are happening in tandem and seeing it as a cohesive, holistic picture.
That's good.
That's just my observation in my first 6 weeks on the job. But I'm aware of those kinds of thinking as well. Like that's how I see it too. Like make sure that the left hand is not doing something that the right hand doesn't know. and things are gonna fall through the cracks, or money's gonna be wasted, or we're gonna miss something. So that's not been my observation.
That's super helpful to know, because I don't feel like that's necessarily what we've heard.
I think
Or
that's,
how
I
it's
think it's
been
fair, and I think some of this, I think like some of the early processes and what we've heard about some of the really first steps of Project Downtown are like potentially good examples of some of the steps in planning. But yeah, the most recent, a recent study session, she talks about the project management.
PMIS, yeah.
MIS, yeah, and it does feel like that feedback is being heard and the like steps taken. So I don't think it's like a fully solved problem yet, but I think it's something that like there is
There's deep
progress
awareness
being.
of.
That's good.
And I think that's gonna be really helpful for like bigger projects and stuff like that. And it's also why, yeah, I think a lot of my feedback on and thoughts on the project downtown stuff as a whole can kind of be put into like two silos where I think there's some stuff that I have about like what's my understanding of the processes that kind of got us to like right now. And there's like some, I think big wins in that, but also some like points of feedback. And then there's like, honestly, less important stuff, but it's just like the details about like at least what has been pitched as existing design, knowing that there's like ongoing planning and actual like more details going. And so I both don't think some of those current or existing design pieces are like definitive things to like put a lot of criticism at, but also like at least help us have the conversation of like, oh yeah, we think this thing is a good idea or not. And it could be helpful to like voice even at this stage as they kind of go into the more detailed planning. Yeah. So, yeah, I have those two buckets of opinions of some process stuff that I don't really know how it will be used as concrete feedback, but seem worth noting, and then like tangible.
Well, and just logistically, it's really hard to do everything all at once. Just as an example, just the Main Street portion of the project is about $30 million. And we have in our charter a debt cap up over. So we couldn't borrow enough money to do all of Project Downtown plus Geneva Village, and those kind of things. We couldn't do it all at once because we have financial limits. But it doesn't make sense to not start and not do things. So we do try to look at everything holistically and do what we can at that. And then we also have business owners on Main Street going, we want stuff done here. We went through all these meetings and we want to see progress. So our council decided, yes, we want to move forward with Main Street, even while we're doing the planning on these other things. But realistically, the whole project downtown, the reimagination of this northern entrance to our city, you're looking at, 5 to 10, 15 years, of all this stuff happening.
Yeah. Well, I think that's like part of why it's so important too, is the budget, right? Like if we're spending money here, could it be better spent
Sure.
here down the line? And if we're not like thinking ahead, there's a lot of opportunity for
Yeah.
that to happen.
Our council spends hours and hours and hours, having that very conversation.
Another one, and I hate that I'm referring to things that we're not gonna now watch or know in this meeting, but like just because it's relevant, that same study session, so it's probably just interesting to watch in general. They presented some of the impact analysis that.
Get that?
Yeah, on like Project Downtown, and the 2 points that I think are like relevant to this comment discussion or that I'm thinking of are like, one is like, yeah, obviously, anytime we're spending money, it could go wrong. I think one of the things they framed decently, and I hope they follow up on that too, is like, but there's also like opportunity cost to not spending any money, right? Like we see this with like the stormwater and stuff, infrastructure, like if we don't get started on things, then like it will come due at some point or our downtown will fall apart and it will stop being like an interesting place. So like the balance of investment is something that I think is being considered pretty well. And I thought that presentation was interesting. Oh, what was my other point? One of the things I took away from that too was like, there is, at least in terms of some of the planning, at least in some of the like iterative steps and the fact that this is a phased approach, and we're just starting with one, they're like, there's some amount of iterativity and like flexibility going on as like part of the, it seems like the project management thinking going into this. And so like, that allows for things of like that economic impact to be somewhat flexible to like certain market conditions. I don't really act like I understand all the assumptions going into some of those models. Like that does seem like it's generally being like considered, and I imagine that too with stuff like Geneva Village, the fact that it's this kind of phased approach. I think it will have to be considered, and I think that's actually absolutely like valuable feedback that we can provide to council and staff is like, hey, let's just make sure you're keeping a pulse on it, but like it does seem like that's possible, and I don't see anything in the existing process that like kind of boxes out future opportunity for like ongoing consideration. That makes sense.
That makes sense.
I made that very blue.
I think that's an interesting point that you make, Bobby. Of like kind of keeping the pulse, because I was thinking about this topic a little bit. Like, how can we continue to kind of focus in on like what as a board, like what would we advise for this project because of how ginormous and long it is, and is there any sort of influence or considerations that we should go over the few months as this starts to kind of pick back up. And so it seems like continuous theme that I'm hearing from November to now is like, there's that, where are we kind of like socializing, right? With Bobby said, maybe watch the study session. And I know a conversation we had, actually it might have been last year, when we had marketing team talk of how can we make those connections back to residents of the city. I wonder if maybe that's what we're kind of starting to talk about based on what I'm hearing feedback from y'all, is that how can we more socialize that, right? So it's more digestible. Because Bobby, you're talking models, and I think that's super cool, but I'm not sure if the rest of us are like, yes, so how can we kind of move the public with that, where it's gonna get that attention, kind of like absorb it a little more easily. So I don't know, does that feel like something that is what we're starting to thinking about based on what I'm hearing on, or still kind of trying to figure out where the project comes from?
I personally am more concerned about what project downtown looks like 20, 50 years from now. And how all of those places work together, how the character's preserved. And if it's like still vibrant and growing and speaking to people, because I see a lot of spaces that aren't being used. And I think that's a big issue. And then I see a lot of spaces that has money going to it that are being used or were being used before the money was going to it. And that's concerning to me. I think, I don't know, I'm looking at this like huge project on the plat and then thinking about some of the other projects we've talked about in here. It just, that's my concern is like, why are we spending money on A instead of B? And kind of thinking as the next generation, like what is gonna keep our kids coming back to downtown Littleton? And what's gonna make us wanna stay in downtown Littleton? What's gonna make people, like, it is a personal, like silly thing, but like you want Littleton to be like the date night spot. You want it to be the place where like you take your kids to play in the park. You want it to be all of these things, and they're trivial, but that's why we all chose to live here, and that is what builds, that's what builds community. So I think building that ecosystem, some of it's trivial things, but it creates an environment that isn't trivial. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that frames the like problem statement well. I'm trying to connect themes. I think like, and like clarity from you on it. I think either direction is good, or both. Many things, but if there are like specific, you don't have to have them now by any means, but like if there are specific things, charm pieces, character pieces, development pieces you think are important that either aren't being considered or are being considered, you just want to amplify that they're important. Those can be great things that we can talk about. The community connection piece, like broaden out from that theme. I'm trying to say is like, that seems to connect a little bit to like what processes would reassure us if that is a concern for us when we're doing major overhauls of our city and a place that adds a ton of charm to our city. It's a very reasonable concern. What would that look like? What do we want to like ask council or staff to do that would offer us some level of reassurance and build some like security in moving that process forward, or helping us even like thinking about it like a decision framework that would help us understand under what conditions that council and staff think this would be like a bad idea. Like what are some of those things that would look like? I think community input and ensuring that there are like adequate touch points for that is like one possible example, but there are other things too, like, hey, can we ensure that, you know, if there's a Geneva Village team and a project downtown team, I don't know if that's how things are structured, but that they're having monthly meeting, like, what would some examples of like processes or functions be that would offer you reassurance in that space?
Well, I think we kind of got on the Geneva Village topic last time because it's just like a great example of one side kind of wants to tear down and start over, and then other people want to preserve. And is it an asset if we, you know, to keep, or is it an asset to sell? So I think when we all started talking, we didn't necessarily agree on what should be there, but we agreed that the character should be in line with Littleton. So if that's setting like a limit on how tall, how many stories the buildings can be.
What the exterior materials can be.
Yeah, or how important we do think like green shared space is. I think those are questions to ask ourselves. I think green space and like green in general with the trees and stuff, it's like, it's a silly thing, but it's really important thing to people. I also think for me, like patios downtown, I think that's something that people really use a lot.
Well, I think that's more,
That's a specific, yeah.
I guess I don't know about processes and stuff, but like what I would love to see is preservation of the aesthetic of historic downtown. Which I know they're doing that, but like when I hear that they're thinking about building like mid-rise affordable housing, and it's not an affordable housing thing, but it's just like how developers build affordable housing. That's not gonna be in line with like historic Littleton, more likely than not, because they're not gonna be using like a brick facing, whatever. So that idea of like, if we're gonna develop it with something that's gonna last and timeless, and that timeless aesthetic. And then I think, I don't wanna speak for you, but the patio thing, I think it's more like ensuring that the infrastructure is built in a way where the businesses can thrive. So like maybe expanding the sidewalk areas off of the restaurants so they do have the opportunity to have more patios, to bring out heaters so those businesses can seat more people year round. Like when you, I don't know, go to places that are like typically warmer climate like California or whatever, their patios are being used year round, like with heaters and blankets. And I know Colorado's different than that, but like there's ways to stretch that with infrastructure. So
That's part of the Main Street project.
building out the sidewalks and everything, then that's great.
But yeah, I think that kind of stuff, like looking at businesses that we see in Littleton that are just clearly thriving and being like, why? And the ones that aren't, why? And applying that where we can, because I think a lot of it does have to do with infrastructure.
Yeah, and this is, again, going back to, this was a good day to do introductions, because again, I introduced like, I of course have certain detailed things equivalent to like the patios or stuff like that. And, but I definitely get going more about like some of the good processing stuff. So I think that's, I don't know, I'm interested in other people. I don't think it's a bad idea if we want to talk details and like look at some of, again, the existing plans and talk about how we will see these concrete things in the design. I also don't think it's wrong if we like, I don't trust myself because I don't spend enough time on this stuff and I'm not aesthetic, or definitely haven't studied a lot of stuff like this, but it's like, I I trust our staff and like council to like make these decisions and also understand that the design of stuff is built into the budget and our zoning and all these other things that like I'm not that much about, so that's where my preference is for like leaning into what are some of the things we could ask staff to do as a process, but ultimately like use their expertise to like make decisions on. Alternatively, we can have a separate part of the letter or based a full letter around that. I can do my own thing with the process stuff of like, do we want to just dig into like, here are the specific things we want to see out of the project downtown and some of the, like the specifics there. So I don't know if other people are like strong opinions on that. I don't think there's a right or wrong way to go. I think it depends on where our interests lie as a group.
I think, I mean, I don't, to your point, Bobby, I don't think that there's anything, it wouldn't make sense necessarily for us to separate those two thoughts, right? I think as a board, we share information in unison, and we also share if there's like, you know, strongly opinionated one way or mixed opinions, right? But I think really what it sounds like is that we are trying to better understand what does this process look like? What are the key characteristics? And I'm wondering now, I was like, how is this representation of our board, right? So what are we trying to kind of make a statement on here? Of, you know, we want these things, here's why, you know, because it seems like we kind of have like the want list, but now I'm curious, like what's the why behind it? Because I think that's what's really going to kind of provide that insight as to like, has this next generation board, this is what we're seeing, this is what we're hearing, you know, because I'm sure we've all been talking to other, you know, neighbors and friends and stuff about, you know, like, oh, are we excited about downtown? I can't wait for it, right? You know, but are we representing that voice as well in this this letter? And that'd be something that we would want to consider. Right? This is which so far I'm hearing good things. I think people are really excited about it. You know, I've heard things, you know, I've got a couple neighbors who, you know, they are bike only people and they're really excited about, you know, the opportunity to have that connection a little bit more, you know, and because of that, I can safely to downtown Littleton, which is important to me. I know that's, you know, kind of separating some other projects, but like do feel safe, you know, with your bicycle downtown is an important feature, right? That's how we are thinking about our mobility. That's, you know, the walkability as well. So those are things that I'm hearing that people are excited by. Like I said, I've got two little ones, so my life is not dictated by a bike. It's strollers, which are enormous. So, you know, those are things that I'm also hearing too, is that there's excitement around that. And, you know, I think things that we can reinforce of like, this is something that is a positive, what's happening. And that's where we want to see more thought take place, right? So we want to be more thoughtful. And how are we sharing out that process? You know, you know, what does that look like to your point, you know, 30, 40, 50 years? What does this look like? You know, how are you thinking about these, you know, things of preserving the historic parts of downtown? I think those things that we can kind of bring into a letter is really what kind of drives that critical thinking for the
When I am thinking about this project, looking at like the final report, there's 3 options. I think whichever option we go with, they're all going to be great. I mean, there's pros and cons with each, but I think all are better than where we're at right now. And one thing that caught my eye during the capital financing study session in September, there were some ROI numbers based off of some local examples. So Rhino invested $48 million in their area, and they saw a private market investment of $850 million on the other side of that, or about a 17x additional amount of money coming in. Castle Rock saw 28.5 times the amount of money they put in coming out. And then Cherry Creek North saw 54 times that amount. So in Littleton, if we're putting in $30 million, even on the low end, if we were to get Rhino money, which is only 17x, we would have $500 million worth of money coming into our city in different forms of investment, theoretically. So I think moving forward with this is going to be a good thing. One question that comes to my mind, thinking about the next generation is how we're paying for it. And that's what isn't as clear to me. I've really tried to understand the different bonds and things, and debt, I think, can be a tool, especially when we're looking at an investment in our community from potential private sources, but we're also in different economic moments than these other municipalities we're in. And so we might not get a 17x return on that investment in our community. And so I think that for me is one of my biggest concerns, because debt while it can be a tool, it can also be a drug. And I don't want our city to get addicted to debt and just go on that gravy train. Yeah.
And just briefly, I could tell you a little bit about the Main Street project.
Yeah.
And the plans to fund that. So we have a debt tool available to us called a certificate of appreciation. Basically, it's what like a homeowner would use a mortgage, right? So with our existing assets, we can pledge them as collateral, so to speak, to get a borrowing rate that's pretty attractive. And so we plan to issue COPs to pay for that portion of the project. Now, the more important than where the debt comes from is how are you gonna pay the debt and how long is it gonna take, right? And so we plan to pay the debt with a portion of the capital improvement sales tax that was passed by voters several years ago. So we're already collecting that money, and we actually are already setting aside a portion of that every year to pay for debt. So there won't be an additional tax that's needed. This won't take away from other services that are being offered by the city. It's money that's set aside, approved by voters for things like this, and it'll help us accelerate those things as opposed to just waiting till you have enough money to pay for it outright. And from a fairness or an equity point of view, one huge advantage of debt is people who will benefit from it will have a chance to pay their share of it. So like some of us won't live in Littleton 5 years from now, 20 years from now. Some people won't be alive 20 years from now. So making them pay 100% of it isn't real fair, right? But someone who moves here 10 years from now will certainly benefit from it. And so having them pay a portion of it, that sounds fair. So from a fairness, equity, and this also accelerating improvements point of view, however, we don't have an unlimited debt possibility because the state constitution, Tabor, other things give us limits. Our own city charter has limits in it. So we do have to be choosy with how we use the debt, and we may have to pay it off before we can do something else. But in this particular situation, the Main Street project is planned to be paid for with COPs, and the way we plan to pay that off is with a portion of the capital improvement sales tax that's already in place.
Do we know what the payback period is? Like
It'll probably be about 20 years, but it could be 25. But we're so 20 or 25.
that 30 million just for Main Street.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. But we haven't actually issued it yet, so it's still uncertain. But that's the plan. That's the direction we received from council.
I do like the way you're thinking about it as like an investment. I think that's important for what's gonna bring people to use this space. I think that's super important.
It doesn't make sense if it doesn't bring in additional investment. That's what makes it make sense, that private investment that comes along after public money is invested. Because the patio is great, but if that doesn't encourage the property owner to do more or whatever, so if we're gonna get the same sales tax and the same people who enjoy it, regardless, why would you spend millions of dollars to make things nicer if it's not going to change things?
Yeah, I think it definitely will.
We do too.
Yeah.
And we have third-party experts who have told us the same thing.
Well, I think you can look at other places in Colorado that have done it and
Yeah.
they've done it well. But I think that's like what Mackenzie and I are concerned about. And I know, but I think it's like the doing it well and like in a way that does attract people, because
I think that is where like the design part does matter and execution really does matter. Because you see these plans and it's like, oh, there's like we've added this much space here for people to gather. And it's like, that's really nice, but like, it's not specific enough. Should it, like, there should maybe be a little more communication between the specific businesses
Yeah.
and landowners and actually creating that into a patio space. Like, I think also trying to get more boutique type businesses, like talking to
Like local businesses.
local businesses or I don't know, different people who've been doing well in the state
Yeah.
and trying to get them to come down here because we have so many chains in Littleton and it doesn't fit. Like, we're not, like, we should be reaching out to, I don't know, I really would like to see that appeal to these more boutique type businesses. I think that's part of it. And I think having the design right and not feeling like, what you said earlier about, there's a lot of neighborhoods where it's like they're building to build.
Like Central Park versus Cherry Creek North.
Mhm.
Those are both investing a ton of capital. Very different results, attracting very different businesses.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, Old South Gaylord versus, where, like, same thing.
Yeah.
Versus the Highlands Ranch or Parker.
And they're both
Parker's
great
putting
and
in a
have their
ton of money,
places,
but
it's
it's a
just
very
different
different
things.
feel, and I think the feel, it sounds so trivial, but I think that's what gets missed because it sounds so trivial.
Here's what I'll say on feel. And I don't mean to be facetious with this, it's just, I think it gets missed. Because what, like, define, like, say this not actually combatively, just because it's how I always like try to think about it, like, how would you tell city staff, how would you tell city council, like, what would you tell them to do?
Oh, I can tell
To
you.
preserve. And do you,
Like brick
and is it
facades.
something that can be not just pushed back on by somebody across the table saying, I don't think that's the feel? Like, it doesn't just boil down to like, I mean, like, of course, at the end of the day, some of it's subjective, but it's like, again, it's like what? Cause I agree, like, I think we can all say like Littleton has a great feel, that's why we like live here and we wanna see that like maintained, but it's like, what does that mean? It's like, we can't blame people for potentially getting that wrong if there's no shared definition or way we can talk about like what getting that feel.
I think you can look at other places though and get a pretty good idea. I mean, trees, mature, neighborhoods with mature trees. Those are the most sought after neighborhoods, having big mature trees and greenscape. That's where people want to be. People are naturally drawn to that. Patio spaces I go back to because people are more likely to go into a store or a restaurant if they see other people there enjoying. I mean, when you drive by a coffee shop and everyone's out on the patio, you're like, oh, I want to go there. So I think it sounds stupid, but those are the things that get people in the door. And those are like small marketing strategies that restaurant owners and shop owners have been using for
Well, and I think like
ever.
more than like the trees for sure, but like what, it's historic downtown Littleton and like this, I know I've said this before, but the sign in the front yard is like, or in the front yard, in the front entrance, you know, on, sorry, today's been so long, on Bulls. It's like super modern. It doesn't go with there's a discrepancy of like what the signage is and like what the buildings are saying. And I think the feel is this, like, what is the story of Littleton? The story of Littleton is we have that really cool historic museum, Littleton History Museum with all these trails. And I think that's the question we need to ask is like, what is the story of Littleton? And to me, what tells that story is established trees, like text that kind of fits the soda shop vibe of the 1950s, 1960s, like on Main Street specifically. Did I already say brick facades? I'm losing my mind. I like truly am losing my mind tonight. But yeah, you get what I'm saying. I don't need to go on. But I think like awnings, pretty awnings, umbrellas, pots, like Cherry Creek's I know it's like I know Cherry Creek is bougier than what we see Littleton as, but it is nice that they decorate for Christmas. And I know we do too, but they have like really beautiful pots with flowers and trees, and it makes an impact for sure. That's it.
I completely agree. I think a lot of those are suggestions that I completely agree on too.
And good lighting. Get rid of the fluorescent BS. No one likes it.
2,700 watt lighting.
Bring back, yeah, the warmth. I think it's about making it feel warm and welcoming.
No, I think this is an awesome conversation, right? I think this is kind of what we've been trying to break into a little bit. I feel like we're having some good polls there. Grandma, I know that you are a thinker, and so you can decline, but I wanted to give you the space to share anything as well before we kind of start to go action.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. I was definitely just sitting and thinking of following the conversation, and I think there's a couple of things that stood out. I think the first thing is like communication and connection. And part of what I was doing is like looking at like the master, I don't know how many pages this thing is, and like the city's website. And I feel like it is comprehensive. I think from what I'm hearing, it's more of that connection of something's happening. How does this relate to me? Like, I know it's happening. I know there's like pictures and charts and everything, but like that tangible impact. And I think the other part that I was just kind of like listening in is we have a lot of, yes, we will include this, but I think we're missing more of that detail of like how tactically is that happening? And more so like, do I want to sit through and look at, an Excel sheet with 100 million things on it? Probably not. But can I see something that's a bit more like tangible of saying like, hey, we hear you. Like I'm looking at this thing and it says historic character, and it gives like a very like good blurb about like, well, it's historic character and key opportunities, but the next page immediately goes into like the plan. So it's like more of, okay, like how are you going to do that? Are you going to be connecting with business owners? Are you going to be just something like more specific? So I guess like if we're thinking about kind of the next steps, I think that might be something that we recommendation of. One, not just saying, well, just information overload people, but how can we do it in a way that lets them know like, hey, we're considering these diverse perspectives. Like they went through, I don't know how many different connect points I saw here. I think it was like 1,800 connect points, so many different community groups and surveys. Like these are feedback points that came from citizens. Now it's like, okay, you gave us this feedback. Here's the plan. We approved it. Now more tactically, like here's how it's going to impact and here's how it's going to show up in the next like 15 years. So that was a lot of word vomit, but essentially like that's what's been going on. So
that's all great stuff. Okay, so with that, I want us to kind of keep moving forward from, because I think we could talk about this all night. And so I think here's what I'm going to ask all of us to do is, between now and next month, right? Take this conversation here, any notes that you have or thoughts that you've been generating, and I want you to draft up either a paragraph to one page, I say that cautiously, but really put down your thoughts onto a piece of paper of what are the things that are interesting to you about this? What are the benefits? What are your concerns? And then also bring in things like how do you describe feeling, right? Is it the lighting? Is it the trees? Is it the way the information is being communicated out, right? Because we want that feel. And I think what that will allow us to do in February is kind of regroup and say, okay, these are the things that we feel strongly about. And then as a group, right, because right now we're kind of picking out a lot of things, we want to kind of hone in and say, okay, these are the 5 things that we think are really important that we want City Council to consider as they continue to move forward with the project, as they continue to work with staff, who are having to have a heavy hand in this, the finance impact, right? I think that is really what's going to kind of let us make that overall advisement on this is what is going to be impactful for this particular project from our perspective as the Next Generation Advisory Board. And I think that's something that we could really sink our teeth into, because I can feel the energy from all of this. And I think that's going to be a good way to kind of move forward from this topic. What do you guys think?
I like that.
Fair? I know I gave everyone all. Sorry.
And I come back to the design board.
I think it should be easy though, because I feel like we can do that pretty quickly. But I think that's a really strong step forward for this, and it also kind of gives us that target of where we want to keep going.
Yeah, honestly, I like the piece, cause I think again, they're like, I think what I like about that is the need to pick out individually for each of us what some of the highest priority pieces are, cause I think again, the scope of this is ginormous, and I think even thinking of all the notes I have so far, it's like, some of these are things that I'm like, yeah, it's feedback, but like,
Yeah.
it's not that important. I don't really care if it gets acted on, and some of it's like, no, these are the core things I like want to be heard for. So if we each have some of those key pieces, then we can figure out how to combine them and almost just like float some of those and see what the consensus and pros cons generated are, and more or less just document that. And I think that in itself is a tangible and helpful outcome, even if we don't necessarily all agree on each other's priority points or anything like that.
Yeah, but I think that's an important part too, is that we share that there is that diverse perspective from the next option. Right? I think that's just as important. So, you know, talk with your friends and family and see if there's other thoughts that haven't been considered. If that's worth sharing. So, okay. So I think that's awesome. That's a great movement point for us. And then what we'll do in February is we'll regroup and share those out. Definitely as those finalize, feel free to email them into, myself and Bobby, and we'll kind of just compile them. And then as we toss something out there, we can talk about in February, so don't worry. Is this something that we want to action as a letter, or is it something that we would want to actually go and present to council to kind of show face? So that's something to noodle on, nothing to make a decision on right now, but it's something that's come up a few times that I wonder if we should consider that. All right. So, we have.
Before we move on real quick, would there be a due date to make sure that you have time to get it all together? Our next meeting is the first Thursday of February, or first Thursday, which is.
The 5th or something.
Yeah, I think.
The 5th, yep.
I'm gonna just make it really tough on everyone. Groundhog's Day, our due date, February 2nd.
Oh, okay. I was like.
I am a working parent. I can work quickly under stress, so don't worry. If it comes in by the 2nd, I'll compile everything, and then, we'll kind of hash it out from there.
I think the only stipulations that if there's anything, which I don't think would be, I'll try to steer us away from this, unless there's anything that you think dictates to actual like agenda setting, then obviously that needs to be in by agenda deadline, but.
When is agenda deadline?
Week ahead of the meeting.
Week ahead of meeting, okay.
Cool. All right. So, we also have, the paper in front of us, most of us do, more of you. So we're gonna do something new and just a second.
Yeah.
All right, so a new activity that we haven't really done as a group yet, but we thought it would be a good way to kind of just talk out loud and review some things that we had discussed previously, is writing a letter regarding your elections. So what I want us to do, if you haven't had the opportunity yet, is over, hopefully this jogs your memory of a conversation we had months ago. But this was a heavy topic, and so what we're gonna do here is just read over the letter, and then Bobby, I think you have the draft.
Yeah.
We'll
do a further intro.
Yeah, and I'm gonna turn it over to you. And so we'll do read the letter, absorb the information, and then we'll kind of edit it live. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Yeah, I mean, I think I drafted this because it's an easier way to like put together the ideas, but with some of the conversations I've had with people who know more about city charter review and the election process and stuff, like, I don't think this is a small or isolated, it is a more multifaceted problem than voter turnout and pieces like that. But based on my research and things I've seen, with voting record and data stuff. Voter engagement hits residents hard on the fact that it's on years disproportionately. It affects voter turnout in general, but it is disproportionately the demographic we are meant to represent. So just to put this letter together to kind of bold that point, but also try to also acknowledge that like this issue is bigger than that one point itself. So I don't consider it like the strongest thing, but yeah, open to feedback on how we want to edit this or whether we think this is a good idea to send in the first place.
Question, kind of two, but I'm gonna start with one. This might be an open can of worms. Should we read this and what's on the record, or is there any way that this will be posted for visibility?
This is posted.
The letter? Okay, perfect.
It's kind of confusing. It's in the agenda packet further down. It's not
Okay,
a
okay.
separate document on that page, but it's out
Okay,
there.
perfect, okay. Okay, so the second question got killed then.
Bobby, as maybe folks are reading through this and maybe have ideas, just kind of.
Yeah, I think so. I think, well, maybe once everyone's through it, first point would be, I guess, figuring out if there's any objection to doing this at all, and then if there's consensus on whether we should send something like this, what changes that would be.
The first question I have is just the data to back up the claim that younger people are more involved in even year elections. I think that I'm assuming that there is based off of what you're saying here, but I think that would probably be important to include. Because I'm not up to speed on the age demographics of even versus odd year elections.
I think that was probably an initial takeaway for me too, see maybe some data supporting. I think the references, I've seen it before, right? But as I'm looking through it, I'm like, ooh.
Include that in there. Sure, yeah, I can find the Arapahoe County. So those pulling.
Wikipedia.
Including the data is good. There.
Has anyone looked into places that have done this or what the possible downsides could be?
Personally,
Upsides or downsides, yeah.
Yeah. Cause I can see there. It is overwhelming, right? How many things can come on the docket? And the other thing with like, the even years and younger people, I think it speaks to emotional votes a lot of the time because people are ramped up and riding on emotion. And I do think there's something to having a time separate from that where people get a pause and kind of think more locally and make their vote outside of all the noise that often happens in even year elections. So those would be my concerns, because I do think there is something about having the space between certain decisions and the space between the noise of even year elections, an odd year. And, you know, when people care about something, they're inclined to vote on it. And it'd be great if everyone voted every time, but I don't necessarily think you want there to be meaning and thought behind it too.
Yeah, I
Those
think
are my concerns.
the main pros are the representation piece, and this is both a pro and con, and I'm not sure how this actually applies at the Arapahoe County level. You are essentially processing fewer elections, which are expensive, and that, but mostly it's that people actually vote, which is, you know, in theory, the point of the elections in the first place. So even if, you know, we don't like where people are necessarily voting from, like, I'm of the opinion that more voting is better, but like, again, I don't disagree, especially in a weird political climate like we're in now, that there is something probably very interesting to be studied about like how voting pattern changes when it's federal and state alongside local. The logistics downside is just the other piece though that like, I don't again understand all the details, but like this is something that I don't think Littleton really gets to like necessarily make easily in isolation because we run our elections through Arapahoe County and they have all of their infrastructure processes and everything else like that. So it's not, I think there are logistics downsides on that side as well. Really good point though of looking into, I don't know about other municipalities that have or have not, or have like tried to do some of this stuff. I think that actually is a really good point, looking into some of that. I don't know if anyone else knows examples, but
Generally, I do agree, more voting.
Boulder might have done it.
Good. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, and I think the point that motivated me most on this as it being a next gen issue specifically is it's one thing that the voter turnout as a whole is higher on even year elections. That in itself, I think, is already like a profound piece. When you look at, again, that I have a chart on this somewhere, I'll see if I can pull it up now, but regardless, I think that's a good inclusion. When you look at the effect size difference across age groups between even in odd year elections, that just gets more and more extreme the younger you get on that. And it just means that like proportionally, our generation's voice is being lost by doing it on the odd year. And so that's hard when we talk about wanting to get younger people more involved in the process, that we're kind of intentionally doing a thing that we know leaves them out of it. So there are certainly pros and cons. I don't think, again, it's universally like, do this, it makes total sense.
My perspective of it is it's more of a symptom versus a root cause. 'Cause when I think about like pulling on board of like more votes is better, like voting is better, is good. But it's more thinking about, okay, if the recommendation is to shift voting to even elections, even though that there is higher turnout, my brain immediately goes to like, well, what's kind of like impacting or stopping maybe like the odd year elections? And to McKinsey's point, like I think there is like some benefit of having maybe a separation from, like federal elections and everything else that's kind of happening. And it kind of goes back to like, even back in November when I voted, like I was downtown and I was like, oh crap, I gotta go vote. And I literally like hopped on the light rail. And at that time it was going from Union Station straight to Littleton downtown, and I was able to like go in and vote, etc. Whereas like if I think about that even right now, like that 20 to 25-minute trip would take an hour because now it's like the 18th California station. So then I have to like take the E line and then transfer, and then like truthfully, like would I do it? Yeah. So what other people say like, oh, is that 35 minutes worth it? Like up in the air. So I think it's more of, are there opportunities or ways that the city can do to maybe like help as things get closer to election or even election day that may help drive that turnout versus more like a systematic shift of like pivoting the entirety of like what's on the ballot to a specific time frame. I do think like it's like I do think it's something that we should give feedback on 100%. I think it's just more of like how.
Yeah, I think that's why I left it very vague, because like, I don't know how you adjust all the existing council members' terms to make it line up with the new, like, I don't understand this, and like, that's exactly what the kind of charter review committee is tasked to go in deeper on, so, I'd be more than happy to add some of these, like, flesh out that section of the letter that basically says, like, I know this isn't, I have it in front of me, I don't know, I'm just not referring to it. Like, this isn't like an isolated issue, we understand that there's like other considerations and like list some of those things out. But at the same time, if there's not good consensus on whether we wanna like even pass this along, I'm also okay with it. Figured I'd throw it together for like a good option. I'm gonna write out the ideas.
I think having the data showing that greater participation in younger demographics is helpful. I think greater voter participation is always a good idea in all demographics. The only concern I have is, I think what we've already talked about is like, potential just distraction from state or federal level politics. There's more noise around local politics, but, I like the intention, and I think that, if that is if the data backs up that voter turnout is better for our demographics, I think that that is a good end
Yeah.
to work towards whatever the messy transition looks like. So I think it's worth continuing.
Maybe we add other options, like Jeremiah said, where it's like, I mean, when Littleton's having an election, we have a cool downtown Littleton. We should have banners up saying, go vote. You know what I mean? Like, it's really quiet. It's kind of hush hush. And it's easy to draw people's attention to that sort of thing when you have a main street and the different places we have. So maybe it is something like what you're saying, where it is just kind of driving that attention toward it and getting people a little more excited. Because it does tend to go under the radar.
I mean, even thinking like local business type of thing of like, hey, it's election day, or maybe there's like some campaign of, I don't know, we're extending happy hour until the polls
Yeah.
close, and it's like, go vote, get a beer, who knows, like have some fun. Like I think there's opportunities of ways to like continuously like push that voter engagement that I think like the city can do and can partner people to complete and do.
Makes people excited about it. That's nice.
After that train ride, if I had a half off beer, I would be very happy.
Denver Beer Code does do that.
Oh,
Where
interesting.
your I voted sticker. Free pint.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that.
So maybe it's more about how they can help support that, bring attention to it. Bobby, I was thinking about this a little bit too, is I wonder if you could include any sort of longitudinal studies of like, what does it look like for the last like years of things, voter turnouts, and see if there's any sort of interesting data points around that too. And I wonder too if maybe the focus maybe shifts a little bit to kind of like what Michael was, keep pursuing that as like kind of your target, but the data might start to tell us that like maybe this is just something that like we need to bring as a more interesting like this the Dark City. I think that as well. Yeah, I love the initiative behind it. I love the thinking behind it. I think that there's definitely something there. Cover a little bit. Sweet.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time to write out the letter and
Seriously.
Yeah, let me take it back and that'll be something I can incorporate some of this feedback. If anyone has any specific wording or other recommendations, if you could just send those to me individually, so we're in open meeting and all collaborating on the same document or something, then I can bring that back and include some of the data and make it add an appendix. That would be the appropriate. Do some of that. And then we can probably make it a quick revisit next month and see if there are any other changes and stuff. Happy for this to be iterative, so.
Love it.
Cool. Thanks, y'all.
Ricky, can I add just one thought? So just from a logistics point of view, the Charter Review Committee will recommend to the council possible changes that voters should consider making. And the council will decide which ones they want to put on the ballot. Right. In the end, it'll actually be the voters who decide on any changes, right? And so you may want to encapsulate that in your letter, so something to the effect of, encouraging or making this available for voters to decide, something of that nature. Because right now, the way I read it, looks more like you're asking council to consider whether or not to make this change, when council doesn't have the authority.
Yeah, they just get to put it forward.
Voters are the ones making this change.
Yeah, that's helpful.
And then
On the context.
I love the idea of strengthening any kind of argument when you're trying to be persuasive, but also it should also give you a little bit of relief knowing that you're not actually making the change. You're just making a recommendation for voters to consider making a change. And then I was thinking of the irony of if it might not be during the even year election that voters decide to put it on even year. But it could be if this year, potentially, but it's likely that the process of the recommendations to go to council would potentially be acted on in 2027.
Good insight there too. Thank you, sir. All right. So Bobby, yeah, if we have any other ideas, we'll send that to you, but otherwise, thank you for taking the initiative to do that and just sharing it out with us so we can have that good conversation point. All right, so we'll, if we're okay there, we'll kind of just move into, the closing parts of our meeting. So, I'll open it up to comments or reports from, staff.
Nothing really. I just wanted to bring up really quickly that, the Littleton sub-area stakeholder group. That's something that I wanted to bring up really quickly because Bobby, I don't know if you sent the email out to the group.
I don't know, but you wanna just introduce it?
Sure.
Take it away.
Mike kind of mentioned it earlier, but there's gonna be a stakeholder group created as a part of that Littleton Boulevard sub-area plan and their redevelopment of that. And Zareen, who's presented here before, wanted to know if NGAB wanted to have a representative, and obviously we do. So since the deadline for that was last week, Bobby kind of formally said, yeah, I'll attend if no one else is interested in attending from the board. So I figured I'd bring that up now if you guys wanted to discuss that really quickly.
And it's something like it's a long commitment, so it would be whoever's planning to be on the board next year, if anyone's redoing, but essentially us, 2 years?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I said to take about 2 years, the approximate end date of October 2027.
So that's basically my goal.
Take it away.
I agree.
Okay, there you go. Obviously, I'll provide reports ongoing as there are interesting updates, but cool.
So the focus is on Main Street or?
No, the kind of eastern stretch of.
Okay, Littleton Boulevard,
Yeah,
okay.
that planning.
It does go beyond that, north and south of Littleton Boulevard, and it's mostly Littleton Boulevard between Broadway and the Mirish. Yeah, but it does go all the way to Main Street and it does go north and south.
So that corridor,
Yeah, exactly.
is it specifically the road or is it like the commercial spaces next to it too?
All of that. It could be the buildings, the potential redevelopment of things, certainly the transportation and the way the road is configured. Also just gathering spaces like the trees in the parks, so Kettering Park and museum and library are part of the study area.
Okay.
Yep. What makes someone want to be at a place. So very, very consistent with what you guys were talking about earlier. And protecting, because it is one of the very few mid-century modern corridors in the state of Colorado, really in the country. And so, do we want to preserve that? And the answer for most people was yes. And you see Cherry Cricket and some other examples of places that have redeveloped very nicely while still preserving character.
Lost Coffee is great, huh?
Yeah, Lost Coffee, exactly. Great example.
Cool. Sounds like keep me signed up for that. Excited for it.
As you should be. That's all I have for you.
No big report, just grateful to listen and hear kind of the questions that you all are stirring with. And I'll schedule time with you guys too to kind of get a little better idea of the goals of this group. That's one of the things I'm sitting, thinking about, like what do you all hope for to be able to accomplish as a board? Yeah, nothing new at this point. Taking it all in.
Happy to have it. So. All right. The board.
I have. So one thing that sparked conversation is some of the other opportunities. I know the Littleton Boulevard one was their transportation master plan and a climate risk and assessment plan. I think when will we get opportunities to be a part of that, similar to this one?
So they're really early. So like the climate resiliency and action plan, we're about to award a contract to a consultant, and then they'll lay out different opportunities, and start to go. So like the Littleton Boulevard sub-area plan started in October, and here we are in January deciding. So we're probably just a few months away from from both of those being better detailed of where that involvement will come from. And even if you don't want to be a representative like that, there'll be pop-ups and different things, in the community throughout that time that you may want to show up at or encourage other people and that kind of stuff. So there'll be lots of ways you can contribute.
Sorry, the comment one.
No, great question. Great question.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, one thought, because you mentioned, a couple of you mentioned that your terms are up. So there are openings right now to reapply. You also could apply for different commissions too. So if you have interest in this or others, this is a great time to make that known to our city council. And also please encourage other people from who you represent to consider participating as well. Tell them about your experience and whatnot.
I texted a friend today to apply to one.
Awesome.
Doing my part.
Thank you. Michael, I know you had sent.
I do have a quick list. So since we had a 2-month hiatus, was just writing things down as they came to mind. I don't expect that we can talk about these things tonight necessarily, but might be good like future conversation topics. But one thing I think is worth our board reconsidering is talking about like some of that environmental conversation specifically around garbage and recycling collection. I think a couple of you know, but my wife and I just recently bought a home in Littleton a few months ago. And so I think we're actually pretty close. I'm on the other side of Euclid too. So
Nice.
I'm on Peakview. So
I'm on Keeley Avenue.
Keeley Avenue. Oh, you're very close. Okay.
I'm not on Keeley Avenue. I'm on Keeley Drive. Sorry.
Drive. Okay. Okay. Yeah. I've ridden my bike by mistake on that Keeley multiple times. So yeah, it's been anecdotally just a mess trying to figure out how to get garbage and recycling set up at our new house. And I think that driving around and just knowing all of the pros and cons of the situation as it stands today, I think that we as a board should maybe just look at that again. I know personal problem bringing it up here, but like, I think that in February, it, along with another, sounds like we might have multiple letters and things going to city council, but I think that this should be maybe a part of that. I've been thinking about, so I guess next topic, homelessness, always a touchy, challenging subject. Just thinking pragmatically, what are like low cost, high impact ways that the city could help more vulnerable populations, especially in colder weather. 2 ideas came to mind. One is the idea of our zoning right now does not allow for private property owners to take in members of the public to park in their parking lots so that they could spend the night in their cars overnight. More commercial focused than residential. I think residential, you could maybe get away with that, but there was something called the Colorado Safe Parking Initiative. They're now closed down due to a lack of funding, but there are groups of people who are without a home, but with a car, who just need a safe place to park, maybe a bathroom or security, but that could be something that a private property owner could decide to do or not do. But I think that it could be worthwhile our city considering that being an option within our zoning, to allow private property owners to have vulnerable people park and stay in their cars overnight. Another idea, and this is way more involved for the city, but Geneva Village is just sitting right there. There's a lot of, again, potential cons here with potentially readying the units, liability issues, but there are units available that I think just at the city council meeting on Tuesday, there was a group that came in and said, that they house people. What was their
They
name?
do sheltering during severe weather, so there's.
Yeah, so I think tonight they're doing it, yeah. So I know that that's a further out idea and might not even be possible, but thinking about that as an asset that we have that we could utilize. The next idea, just another observation, is As we're talking about mobility and our streets, some of our sidewalks are not very wide. And so if we're ever at the point where we're redoing our streets, especially maybe along, if we were to prioritize them, maybe like the Littleton Snow Priority Map, where it's these busier streets, widening those sidewalks. Our streets are plenty wide to still have both traffic moving both ways and parking on both sides and have wider sidewalks. So if we're going to be redoing city roadways, I think that that would be worth considering. Another idea I had, just two more, is I don't believe, maybe you can confirm, I don't believe the city of Littleton is a part of the Southeast Metro Stormwater Authority. Is that correct? We're sort of on our own for.
Not sort of, we are on our own. We are
on
our
our
own stormwater utility.
Okay.
So thank you very much. You're now paying a stormwater utility.
Love it. So one idea I had
We
was.
do collaborate with the surrounding stormwater utility, like that agency.
Yeah, is that thinking about us representing younger people, the next generation, consolidating that, joining something like the Southeast Metro Stormwater Authority. Is that something that's a possibility? Is that something that would have capital improvement opportunities for us where we're not having to spend as much of our money on stormwater, maintaining it? Are there other like ways to save too, thinking about the Bellevue Service Center and how much of that is being used for our sewage system? I don't know. These are just questions I have. So that could be another topic of discussion. Here's a really far out one. So city boundaries. They've been kind of set for a while, but is there a way that we can add or subtract from that? So we have sort of an island out near Chatfield, a trail mark. Feels kind of random. Not. I know they're a metro. You've told me about metro something district. Yes. Pros and cons with that, but they're sort of on an island. It's kind of strange. And I know
They're not a metro district. You think of Highlands Ranch as a metro district. But Trailmark.
is Trailmark not?
They're an HOA, but they're part of the city. So they're not, so like Highlands Ranch is its own metro district instead of being a city.
Yeah.
Trailmark is part of the city of Littleton.
I thought it was both.
No.
Oh.
Highlands Ranch is a metro district.
Yeah, I know Highlands Ranches.
Trailmark is city of Littleton. And they're an HOA also, but.
Okay. Anyways, they're an island. It's kind of strange. I wonder what, I think it was 1998 they got involved with the city of Littleton. Would love to understand that more, why we did it, and if it makes sense to continue that going forward. And then if there are ways to annex potentially parts of unincorporated counties, Jefferson County. One of our big ways that we get money as a city is from sales taxes. They're just down Bowles in the direction of our city already. There are huge establishments that collect sales taxes. And so would that be worth bringing in some new residents and some new businesses that then we have to help maintain, but we get a lot of sales tax from? I don't know. I think that could be, we're looking at the long range of 30+ years. That could be something we're talking about.
They already think they're in Littleton.
I know, they've got the Littleton address. Hey, we're in Littleton. Yeah, it's.
That's actually why Trailmark was annexed, was the thought was you'd eventually annex.
Yeah.
So Sterling Ranch part of Littleton?
No. That's unincorporated Douglas County.
Oh, okay. I think of Littleton.
Great questions. But I think it's a worthy conversation to talk about. Yeah. I mean, at the very least, you'll walk away with more knowledge and information.
Absolutely. So I wrote this all up. I thought it could maybe be in our agenda, but it wasn't because I sent it like 2 days ago. And so there's a week deadline for doing that tonight. So I can add some of this to our agenda for next month as well.
With the, I mean, potential all the points, there's probably right people to talk to, but would you want to reach out to ESB to touch base on where the waste hauler stuff stands and where we could use support for them? You are a touch point with ESB.
I'm on ESP as
ESP?
well, yeah.
Ah, liaising already.
Liaising. Also, council, this is on our radar. We did talk about this last night. Council's talking about it. We do have a retreat in the end of February where we will be discussing our priorities for the year ahead. So this is on the city's radar. There's been work also to coordinate with Centennial and Inglewood
Sure.
and Sheridan.
Ooh, that's a big contract.
Because Littleton is apparently not a big contract, actually, just on our own.
Really?
We're bigger than Sheridan,
We're
obviously.
bigger than Sheridan,
Yeah.
but we would have more buying power together.
Lower rates.
And
So
so
interesting.
this is a conversation. Also, it's controversial. So some people get upset about the idea of being told which trash company to use. And so it will require community engagement and really helping people understand the benefits of it. The benefits environmentally, the benefits for our roads, for visually driving down the road and not seeing 5 different trash cans every day from different people. And financially, it would be cheaper for folks. So there's a lot of benefits, but we're working, the communications team will be a part of it, of how do we really help make sure there's strong buy-in from the community.
Yeah.
I think that would be the lowest hanging of this whole long list here. I think that would be the lowest hanging fruit.
And has a big impact. It's.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm all for, I mean, I think when we did the waste study letter, like I'm all for points on that. I think I wanna make sure if we do like re-engage with that we like collaborate with the relevant boards, and that also like we have the kind of like most up-to-date knowledge around kind of like what staff and council are kind of like thinking about as the major considerations and how we can plug into that or help guide them to or from pieces rather than like just looking at it kind of in isolation as a board. So yeah, similarly, the sidewalk stuff and like TMB, like I don't know where that fits into their current planning and like what they're thinking about on the master plan, and it sounds like we might have a nice role in being part of the transportation master plan too, so it'd be an awesome opportunity for work on that over time.
Would we know things like our stormwater system and annexing or dropping parts of the city? What board or who would even own that discussion or knowledge?
The knowledge would probably come from staff, or we could invite an expert for that matter. There's not, I wouldn't say there's necessarily a single board that would be I mean, you know, certainly there's environmental stewardship when it comes to stormwater, but this isn't an issue that they've talked about or looked into at all. So it's perfectly appropriate for you to take the lead on that. And what I was thinking of when you were describing what you wanted to explore is, you know, a few years ago, we joined the South Metro Fire District, and we gave up having our own fire department. And it was a vote of people that, made that happen. There was some significant advantages to that. There are also some significant disadvantages to that.
Sure.
There's still people who rue the day that we gave up the legacy of our own fire department. So interesting conversation. I think that if you as a board today, this is something we want to look into, you could start that conversation.
People who are upset still that they gave up water rights to Denver Water. So I mean, it's just, there's always.
Well, that was voted people also, so.
Yeah, so I mean, but there's, this conversation is lots of history.
Lots of history.
That's my whole list.
Do you have anything else?
Wait, question. So for the people who are, their terms are coming to an end, when is that official?
March.
March.
Is the last one. So April will be a new seated board.
Okay, so we have 2 more meetings. Okay.
March. Start over storming farm.
Here.
I know, isn't that crazy? Thank you for, the thought around that, Michael. I think that's some good topics that we can. Appreciate that. Anything else from our board members?
I personally would love to see those topics on the agenda for the next.
Which time do you think?
That's a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, maybe not every single one of them.
I think we should put on the agenda, like discussing where to slot those into like a roadmap.
Yes.
Prioritizing what you wanna focus on.
Here we go, here we go. That's,
We'll plan
just said it that way.
So
Yes.
maybe just, yeah, if there's, maybe we, if you have other things to add to that discussion of things we could roadmap, now would not be a bad time, especially with some of you leaving the board. I just because you're not necessarily gonna be on the board next year doesn't mean I don't think you should have some input on what certain priorities and stuff can be. So that could be great to talk about.
And then just, on an individual level, if you want to go through a whole list of different things and learn more yourself, you can coordinate with Chris to connect you with the subject matter expert. We have our utilities manager, for example, has been with the city of Littleton for 47 years. I would consider him a subject matter expert.
Absolutely.
So, or if you had a question about our budget, we have obviously people in finance, so you don't have to wait for a meeting. If you individually want more information, that you become a little bit more expert in the matter as you come to the board, we can absolutely prep you in between meetings.
Fantastic offer. We got nothing.
You're good? Okay. Well, I will say thank you all for the very engaging conversation tonight. It seems we came back refreshed and have a lot of great ideas. I think we have some seriously good momentum moving forward, so I appreciate you all bringing your best versions of yourself, especially right after the holidays. But again, I feel great about all the things that we're doing our time and effort to do. And always, if you have anything that you want to share, discuss, please send me an email, let me know. I'm happy to hold that space for all of us. So, but with that, we'll go ahead and adjourn our meeting today. So stay warm. We'll see you next time.
Thank you. Drive safely. Walk safely. Ride safely.
Night for a ride.
Correct.
We could have done it last week.
Nice to meet you.
Can I just say the next Gen Advisory Board already advocated for parking lots.
Really?
So if you would ask Chris to go in the street, next Gen already.
How was
Yeah. Annexation.
I know, I'm gonna take them on all and make them.
So-